The morning sun cast long shadows across Forward Operating Base Courage in Afghanistan's Helmand province. Captain Sarah Martinez adjusted her body armor and checked her sidearm one final time before heading to the briefing room. At 28, she was one of the youngest captains in the 82nd Airborne Division, and certainly one of the few women leading combat operations in this godforsaken corner of the world. But she hadn't earned her rank by backing down from challenges. She'd earned it by proving herself again and again in situations where failure meant body bags. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The intelligence briefing that morning painted a grim picture. Taliban forces had been massing in the valley below, using a series of caves and fortified positions to launch coordinated attacks on supply convoys. 3 convoys had been hit in the past week, resulting in 7 KIA and 15 wounded. The brass wanted it stopped, and they wanted it stopped now. "Gentlemen," Colonel Davidson began, his weathered face grave as he addressed the assembled officers, and Captain Martinez, he added with a slight nod in her direction. The room was thick with tension, maps spread across tables showing elevation points, known enemy positions, and potential routes of advance. Staff Sergeant Mike Torres, a grizzled veteran with 2 previous deployments, leaned forward in his chair. "Sir, intelligence suggests we're looking at approximately 40 to 60 insurgents dug into those caves. They've got RPGs, mortars, and at least 2 heavy machine gun nests covering the approaches." Captain Martinez studied the terrain maps with practiced eyes. Her engineering background from West Point kicked in as she analyzed sight lines, dead space, and potential flanking routes. "Colonel, what about air support?" she asked, her voice cutting through the murmur of conversation. "Limited," Davidson replied. "We've got 1 Apache on standby, but weather reports show a storm system moving in. We might have 2 hours of good flying conditions, maybe less." The mission parameters were becoming clear, and they weren't favorable. A direct assault up the valley would be suicide. The enemy had chosen their position well. High ground, interlocking fields of fire, and multiple escape routes through the cave system. But Martinez had been studying these kinds of tactical problems since her days at the academy, and she was already forming a plan. "What about the ridgeline to the east?" she asked, pointing to a series of contour lines on the map. "If we can get a small team up there with heavy weapons, we could provide overwatch and suppression fire while the main assault force moves up the western approach." Torres shook his head. "Ma'am, that's a 12-hour climb in full kit, and once you're up there, there's no easy way down if things go sideways." "Which is exactly why they won't expect it," Martinez countered. She'd been running scenarios in her head since the briefing started. A 4-person sniper team with a Barrett .5 cal and plenty of ammunition. We set up before dawn, coordinate with the main assault, and turn their advantage into a disadvantage. The room fell silent. Everyone knew the risks. The ridgeline was exposed, difficult to access, and would leave the sniper team completely isolated if the main assault failed. It was the kind of mission that made careers or ended them. Colonel Davidson's eyes moved between the map and Martinez's face. He'd served with enough soldiers to recognize the look of someone who had already made up their mind. "All right, Captain," Davidson finally said. "You'll take Corporal Jensen, Specialist Park, and Private Williams up the ridge. Jensen handles spotting, Park manages communications, Williams covers security. You'll have 12 hours to get in position and coordinate with the main assault team." Martinez nodded, already running through equipment lists and timing calculations in her head. "Roger, sir. You'll have whatever you need," Davidson interrupted. "But Martinez, bring your people home. All of them."
The pre-dawn darkness was absolute as Martinez and her team began their ascent of the eastern ridge. Each member carried over 60 pounds of equipment: rifles, ammunition, communication gear, water, and medical supplies. The Barrett M82A1 .50 caliber rifle was broken down into its component parts and distributed among the team, adding another 25 pounds to their burden. Corporal Jake Jensen, her spotter, was a quiet professional from Montana who could read terrain and wind conditions like a road map. At 24, he'd already completed 2 combat deployments and had developed an almost supernatural ability to predict where targets would appear before they showed themselves. Specialist Amy Park handled communications. The Korean-American soldier from California had been top of her class in radio operations and could maintain contact with multiple units while troubleshooting equipment problems that would leave most technicians scratching their heads. Her job would be crucial, coordinating the timing between the sniper team and the main assault force. Private First Class David Williams was the youngest member of the team at 19, but what he lacked in experience, he made up for in raw determination. The kid from Tennessee had volunteered for every difficult assignment since arriving in country, and Martinez had watched him develop from a nervous recruit into a reliable soldier. The climb was brutal. The terrain was loose shale and jagged rock, made treacherous by previous days' rain. Each step had to be carefully placed to avoid sending rocks cascading down the mountainside, potentially alerting enemy sentries to their movement. They moved in single file, Martinez leading, using hand signals and infrared strobes visible only through night vision goggles. 3 hours into the climb, Williams stumbled, his boots slipping on wet rock. The sound echoed across the valley like a gunshot. The team immediately froze, weapons ready, waiting to see if their position had been compromised. Minutes passed in absolute silence before Martinez signaled them to continue. "Stay focused," she whispered into her throat microphone. "We're committed now." By the time they reached their planned position, the eastern horizon was beginning to show the first hints of dawn. The ridgeline offered a commanding view of the valley below and the cave complex that housed their targets. Martinez could see the main assault force staging area 3 miles to the west, tiny figures moving between vehicles and defensive positions. Jensen immediately began setting up their hide site, using natural rock formations and camouflage netting to create a position that would be nearly invisible from below. The Barrett was assembled with practiced efficiency, its bipod legs extended and adjusted for the proper angle of fire. "Distance to primary target," Martinez asked, settling in behind the massive rifle. Jensen peered through his spotting scope, calculating range and environmental factors. 840 meters to the main cave entrance. Wind is variable, mostly from the southwest at 5 to 8 miles per hour. Temperature differential will increase as the sun rises. Park established communication with the command post and main assault team. "Overwatch is in position and ready to support," she reported. "Main assault team, acknowledge." Torres's voice crackled through the radio. "Roger, Overwatch. Main assault is staged and ready. We initiate in 30 minutes. Martinez adjusted her position behind the Barrett, feeling the familiar weight of the weapon against her shoulder. The .50 caliber rifle was a monster, capable of putting a half-inch diameter bullet through engine blocks at over a mile. In the hands of a skilled marksman, it could change the entire dynamic of a firefight. Through her scope, she could see movement in the cave complex, figures moving between positions, the glint of sunlight off metal, weapons being positioned and ammunition being distributed. The enemy was preparing for the assault they knew was coming. "Multiple targets visible," she reported quietly. "Count at least 12 individuals in the primary cave complex. I can see 2 heavy weapons positions, one northeast corner, one southwest. Both have clear fields of fire covering the main approach." Jensen confirmed her observations through his spotting scope. "Additional movement in the secondary caves. Estimate 20 to 25 total combatants visible." The radio crackled with Torres's voice. "Overwatch, main assault is beginning movement. Time to target area is 15 minutes. Martinez felt her heart rate slow as she entered what snipers called the zone, that state of absolute focus where everything except the target faded into background noise. Her breathing became controlled and rhythmic, her finger found its familiar place on the trigger, and the crosshairs of her scope settled on the primary heavy machine gun position. "Targets acquired," she reported, "ready to engage on your command." The next few minutes passed with agonizing slowness. Through her scope, Martinez watched as enemy fighters moved between positions, completely unaware that death was watching them from the ridgeline 800 meters away. She could see their faces clearly, young men, some barely older than Williams, convinced they were fighting for their beliefs. But Martinez had her own beliefs, and chief among them was bringing her soldiers home alive. The men in those caves had been killing American servicemen and women for weeks. Today, that stopped.
Main assault team is in position, Torres reported. Overwatch, you are cleared to engage targets of opportunity. Repeat, you are cleared to engage. Martinez's finger tightened on the trigger as she centered her crosshairs on the enemy machine gunner. 840 meters. Variable wind from the southwest. Temperature rising as the sun climbed higher. She exhaled slowly, found her natural respiratory pause, and squeezed. The Barrett .5 caliber rifle erupted with a thunderous roar that echoed across the valley like the voice of an angry god. The massive bullet traveled downrange at over 2,800 feet per second, covering the 840 meters to target in less than 1 second. Martinez's first shot took the primary machine gunner in the center of his chest, the .5 caliber round literally lifting him off his feet and throwing him backward into the cave. The heavy machine gun fell silent instantly, its deadly field of fire eliminated before the main assault team had taken their first step. Target down, Jensen confirmed through his spotting scope. Secondary gunner moving to man the weapon. Martinez was already working the bolt, chambering another round. The second enemy fighter had just reached for the machine gun when her second shot found him, this one taking his head clean off in a pink mist that painted the cave wall behind him. Jesus Christ, Williams whispered, watching the carnage through his binoculars. Stay focused, Martinez snapped, already acquiring her next target. Park, tell main assault they have a clear approach on the northeast side. The enemy fighters in the caves were in chaos. They'd expected an assault from the valley floor, but the devastating, accurate fire from the ridgeline had caught them completely off guard. Martinez could see them scrambling between positions, trying to locate the source of the shots that were picking them off one by one. Her third shot took out a fighter carrying an RPG, the explosion of the rocket-propelled grenade's warhead adding to the confusion below. The fourth and fifth shots eliminated 2 more combatants who had attempted to set up a mortar position. Main assault is moving, Park reported. They're taking light fire from the secondary positions, but the primary cave is neutralized. Martinez continued her methodical destruction of the enemy positions. Each shot was carefully aimed, each bullet precisely placed. The Barrett's massive rounds didn't just wound, they eliminated threats permanently and created a psychological impact that went far beyond their physical damage. Through her scope, she watched as the man assault team reached the base of the hill and began their advance. Torres had coordinated the attack perfectly, using the chaos created by her sniper fire to move his soldiers into position with minimal casualties. Overwatch, I've got movement in Cave System Bravo. Can you get eyes on the backside of the ridge? Jensen immediately shifted his spotting scope to scan the secondary cave complex. Confirm multiple targets attempting to flank our man assault team. Range is 910 meters. Martinez adjusted her position and acquired the new targets. The range was longer, the wind had picked up, and she was now shooting across a different angle of the valley. She made quick calculations for bullet drop and wind drift. Her sixth shot caught the lead flanking fighter just as he emerged from cover, spinning him around and dropping him immediately. The others dove for cover, but Martinez was already tracking them through her scope. They're trying to break contact, she reported, multiple individuals moving toward the northern exit routes. Negative, Torres replied. Do not let them escape. We need to end this here and now. Martinez's 7th and 8th shots found their marks, 2 more enemy fighters eliminated as they attempted to flee through the cave system. Jensen was calling out corrections and new targets, his Montana drawl calm and professional despite the intensity of the engagement. Winds picking up, Jensen reported, gusting from the southwest now 8 to 12 miles per hour. Martinez made the necessary adjustments and continued her systematic elimination of targets. Each shot required complete focus and precision. There was no room for error at these ranges, especially with a crosswind affecting bullet trajectory. By her 10th shot, the surviving enemy fighters had realized they were being engaged by a sniper team and began attempting to locate her position. Muzzle flashes began appearing from various cave entrances as they fired wildly toward the ridgeline, their bullets falling far short of the team's position.
"They're getting desperate," Williams observed, watching enemy tracer rounds arc uselessly through the air hundreds of meters below their position. Martinez's 11th shot silenced another enemy position, followed quickly by her 12th and 13th. The Barrett's ammunition was heavy. Each round weighed nearly 4 ounces, but she'd planned for an extended engagement and had brought plenty. "Man assault has reached the primary objective," Torres reported. "We're clearing the caves now. Overwatch, continue to provide support for any squirters." Martinez maintained her vigil behind the scope, searching for any remaining threats. The mathematical precision of long-range shooting had always appealed to her analytical mind. Calculating distance, wind speed, temperature, humidity, and bullet drop to place a projectile exactly where it needed to be. Her 14th shot eliminated a sniper who had been trying to engage the main assault team from a concealed position. The enemy marksman had been good enough to remain hidden from the advancing soldiers, but not good enough to escape Martinez's attention from her elevated position. "That's the last of them," Jensen reported. "I'm not seeing any more movement in the target area." Park's radio crackled with Torres's voice. "Overwatch, main assault reports all objectives secured. Cave complex is clear. Outstanding shooting up there, Captain." Martinez finally lifted her head from the scope, her neck and shoulders stiff from maintaining position for over an hour. 14 shots fired, 14 targets eliminated, not a single round wasted. But as she surveyed the scene below through her binoculars, she knew this was just the beginning.
The extraction from the ridgeline took 4 hours, but Martinez and her team made it back to forward operating base Courage without incident. Word of their success had already spread throughout the base, and soldiers stopped their conversations to watch as the sniper team passed. Martinez ignored the stares and whispered comments, focusing instead on the debriefing that awaited her. Colonel Davidson was waiting in the operations center when they arrived, along with several officers Martinez didn't recognize, their crisp uniforms and clean boots marking them as rear echelon personnel, probably intelligence types or staff officers from higher headquarters. "Outstanding work up there, Captain," Davidson began. 14 confirmed kills, 0 friendly casualties. The cave complex has been completely secured, and we've recovered a significant amount of intelligence materials." One of the unfamiliar officers stepped forward, a lieutenant colonel with sharp features and cold eyes. "Captain Martinez, I'm Lieutenant Colonel Harrison from Division Intelligence. I need to ask you some questions about your engagement." Martinez felt the hair on the back of her neck rise. Something in Harrison's tone suggested this wasn't a routine debriefing. "Of course, sir. What do you need to know?" Harrison opened a folder and began reading from it. "You fired 14 rounds from an M82A1 Barrett rifle at ranges between 800 and 920 meters. All 14 shots resulted in confirmed kills. That's a remarkable accuracy rate, Captain." "I had an excellent spotter and ideal conditions, sir," Martinez replied carefully. "The enemy positions were well defined, and we had superior observation from the ridgeline." "Nevertheless," Harrison continued, 14 kills with 14 shots from those ranges is unusual. Some people might find it hard to believe. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Martinez suddenly understood what was happening. Someone was questioning whether her after-action report was accurate. Someone was suggesting she might be exaggerating her performance. Staff Sergeant Torres, who had been standing quietly near the back of the room, stepped forward. "Sir, I was coordinating the main assault from the command post. I had direct observation of the target area through scopes and binoculars. I can confirm that Captain Martinez's shooting was exactly as she described. Every shot eliminated an active threat to my soldiers." Harrison barely glanced at Torres before returning his attention to Martinez. "Staff Sergeant, I appreciate your input, but I'm more interested in the technical aspects of these claimed shots. Captain, are you familiar with the ballistic characteristics of the .50 caliber round at those ranges?" Martinez felt her jaw tighten. She had spent hundreds of hours studying ballistics, trajectory tables, and environmental factors. She'd earned expert ratings on every weapon system she had ever trained on, and now some intelligence officer who'd probably never fired a shot in combat was questioning her professional competence. "Yes, sir. I'm familiar with the ballistic characteristics," she replied, her voice carefully neutral. "At 800 meters, the M82A1 firing M33 ball ammunition has approximately 18 inches of bullet drop and is affected by crosswind at a rate of roughly 1 inch per mile per hour of wind speed. At 900 meters,
these factors increase proportionally. Harrison made notes in his folder. And you're claiming you made these calculations and corrections for every shot under combat conditions? I'm not claiming anything, sir, Martinez said, her patience beginning to fray. I'm reporting what happened. I've been shooting competitively since I was 12 years old. I graduated from the Army Marksmanship Unit Sniper Course with the highest scores in my class. I've made similar shots under similar conditions multiple times in training and combat. Colonel Davidson intervened before the conversation could escalate further. Lieutenant Colonel Harrison, Captain Martinez is one of our most experienced marksmen. Her qualifications and combat records speak for themselves. I'm sure they do, Harrison replied with a thin smile, but you have to understand, gentlemen, that claims of this magnitude require verification. 14 precision shots in rapid succession under combat conditions, it's the kind of performance that gets written about in military journals. We need to be absolutely certain about the accuracy of our reports. The implication was clear, and it hung in the air like smoke from a battlefield. Martinez felt something cold and angry settling in her chest. She'd risked her life on that ridgeline, had eliminated threats that could have killed American soldiers, and now she was being treated like she'd fabricated the whole thing. Sir, she said quietly, are you suggesting that I falsified my after-action report? Harrison's eyes met hers. I'm suggesting that exceptional claims require exceptional evidence, Captain, and right now we only have your word and the observations of soldiers who were several miles away during the engagement. The room fell silent. Martinez could hear the hum of air conditioning and the distant sound of helicopters landing on the base. Every officer present understood what was happening. A female captain's combat performance was being questioned in a way that would never happen to a male soldier with the same record. Jensen, who had remained quiet until now, spoke up. Sir, I was spotting for Captain Martinez during the entire engagement. I observed every shot through a high-power scope. I can provide detailed information about each target, the environmental conditions, and the accuracy of each round fired. And you're her subordinate, Harrison replied dismissively. Hardly an unbiased witness. Martinez felt something snap inside her. She'd spent her entire military career dealing with subtle and not-so-subtle questioning of her abilities. She'd proven herself again and again, only to have her competence challenged by men who'd never faced the tests she had passed. Lieutenant Colonel, she said, her voice deadly quiet. Are you exactly what would constitute adequate proof for you? Because I have a feeling that no amount of evidence would satisfy your concerns about my performance.
The tension in the operations center was thick enough to cut with a knife. Lieutenant Colonel Harrison's eyes narrowed as he studied Martinez's face, clearly recognizing the challenge in her voice. Captain, I think you're misunderstanding the nature of my inquiry, Harrison said smoothly. This isn't personal. It's simply unusual for any soldier, male or female, to achieve this level of accuracy under combat conditions. The Pentagon takes these reports very seriously. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Martinez stood straighter, her brown eyes locked on Harrison's face. Then let me make this simple for you, sir. I suggest we arrange a demonstration. Give me a Barrett rifle, set up targets at similar ranges, and I'll show you exactly what I can do, right now, if necessary. The room went dead silent. Colonel Davidson looked between Martinez and Harrison, clearly weighing the implications of what she'd just proposed. Calling for a live demonstration was essentially throwing down a gauntlet. If Martinez failed to perform, it would validate Harrison's skepticism. If she succeeded, it would make Harrison look like a fool. That's an interesting proposal, Captain, Harrison said after a long pause. But range conditions are hardly equivalent to combat stress. Then let's make it interesting, Martinez replied, her voice carrying the same quiet confidence that had gotten her this far. Set up multiple targets at varying ranges. Make it a time-pressured exercise. Have someone shooting back at me with blanks to simulate return fire. Whatever it takes to satisfy your curiosity about my capabilities. Staff Sergeant Torres grinned from his position near the back of the room. He'd seen that look in Martinez's eyes before. It was the expression she wore when someone had pushed her too far and was about to learn a painful lesson about underestimating her. Colonel Davidson made his decision. Lieutenant Colonel Harrison, I think Captain Martinez has made a reasonable offer. We have a range facility that can accommodate long-distance precision shooting. If you have concerns about the accuracy of her report, perhaps a demonstration would resolve them. Harrison was trapped. He'd pushed the issue to this point, and now backing down would make him look weak. Very well, he said stiffly. We can arrange something for tomorrow morning. Why wait? Martinez asked. We've got 3 hours of good daylight left. The range is available, unless there's some reason you'd prefer to delay. The challenge was unmistakable now. Harrison's face flushed slightly, but he nodded. Fine, we'll do this now. 30 minutes later, Martinez found herself at the base's long-range shooting facility. A Barrett M82A1 rifle laid out on a shooting table. Word had spread quickly through the base about the impromptu demonstration, and a small crowd of soldiers had gathered to watch. The range master, Sergeant First Class Roberts, had set up targets at ranges from 600 to 1,000 meters. Some were standard military silhouettes, others were smaller precision targets no bigger than a dinner plate. The wind was gusting unpredictably, more challenging conditions than she'd faced on the ridgeline. 14 targets, Roberts announced to the assembled crowd, ranges from 600 to 1,000 meters. Captain Martinez will have 20 minutes to engage all targets. Harrison stood with his arms crossed, flanked by the other intelligence officers. This should be interesting, he murmured to one of his colleagues. Martinez ignored the spectators and focused on her pre-shot routine. She checked the rifle's zero, tested the bolt action, and examined each round of ammunition. Jensen took his position as spotter, setting up his scope and range-finding equipment with practiced efficiency. First target is at 600 meters, Jensen reported quietly. Wind is variable, 3 to 7 miles per hour from the west. Martinez settled in behind the Barrett, feeling the familiar weight of the weapon against her shoulder. The crowd, the skeptical intelligence officers, Harrison's doubts, all of it faded into background noise as she entered her shooting zone. Her first shot rang out across the range, the massive boom of the .50 caliber echoing off the surrounding mountains. Through the spotting scope, Jensen watched the bullet impact dead center on the 600-meter target. Hit, he called out. Martinez worked the bolt smoothly, chambering another round. The second target was at 750 meters, a more challenging shot with the crosswind. She made her calculations, adjusted her point of aim, and fired. Hit, Jensen confirmed again. The crowd began murmuring as Martinez systematically engaged each target. Her movements were economical and precise. No wasted motion, no hesitation. Each shot was followed by the smooth working of the bolt, the acquisition of the next target, and another perfectly placed bullet. By the time she reached her 10th shot, the murmuring had stopped entirely. The assembled soldiers were watching in complete silence as Martinez demonstrated a level of marksmanship that most of them had never seen before. Target 11 was at 900 meters, a small precision target that would be challenging for any marksman. Martinez adjusted her position slightly, compensated for the increased wind drift at the longer range, and fired. The bullet struck dead center. Jesus, someone whispered from the crowd. Targets 12 and 13 fell in quick succession, both at ranges exceeding 950 meters. Martinez's shooting was mechanical in its precision, each bullet placed exactly where she intended it to go. The final target was at 1,000 meters, the maximum effective range for most shooters with the Barrett system. The wind had picked up, gusting unpredictably across the range. It was the kind of shot that would challenge even the most experienced snipers. Martinez took extra time with her calculations, consulting with Jensen about wind conditions and making minute adjustments to her scope. When she finally fired, the bullet seemed to hang in the air for an eternity before finding its mark at the center of the distant target. Hit, Jensen called out, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent range. All targets eliminated. Martinez lifted her head from the scope and looked directly at Lieutenant Colonel Harrison. 14 shots, 14 hits. Just like yesterday.
The silence on the range stretched for several heartbeats before erupting into applause from the assembled soldiers. Martinez ignored the cheering and focused on Harrison's face, watching as the intelligence officer struggled to process what he'd just witnessed. "Outstanding shooting, Captain," Colonel Davison said, walking over to examine the rifle. "I've been in the Army for 22 years, and I've never seen marksmanship like that." Harrison approached more slowly, his earlier skepticism replaced by something that looked uncomfortably like embarrassment. "Captain Martinez, that was impressive," he admitted grudgingly. "Perhaps I was too hasty in questioning your after-action report." Martinez began breaking down the Barrett rifle with methodical precision, her movements economical and practiced. "Perhaps you were, sir," she replied without looking up from her work. "But I understand the need for verification. Extraordinary claims and all that." The crowd of soldiers began dispersing, many stopping to shake Martinez's hand or offer congratulations. She accepted their praise politely, but without enthusiasm. She'd proven her point, but the fact that she needed to prove it at all left a bitter taste in her mouth. Jensen finished packing up his spotting equipment and joined her at the shooting table. "Ma'am, that was some of the finest shooting I've ever seen. You made it look easy." "It wasn't easy," Martinez replied, securing the Barrett's components in their carrying case. "It was necessary. Some people need to see things with their own eyes before they'll believe them." Staff Sergeant Torres approached with a wide grin on his weathered face. "Captain, I've been bragging about your shooting for months, but even I didn't know you were that good. Where the hell did you learn to shoot like that?" Martinez smiled for the first time since the demonstration began. "My grandfather," she said. "He was a Marine sniper in Vietnam. Started teaching me when I was 8 years old. Shooting isn't about the gun," he used to say. "It's about the person behind it." The memory brought back summers spent on her grandfather's ranch in Texas, learning the fundamentals of marksmanship on an improvised range he'd built in the back pasture. Hours spent prone behind various rifles, learning to read wind and calculate distance, developing the mental discipline that would serve her throughout her military career. "He sounds like a wise man," Torres observed. "He was," Martinez agreed. "He also taught me that some people will never respect you until you force them to. Said the military was full of men who'd test every woman who tried to do their job. Don't get mad about it," he told me. "Get better than them, then prove it when it matters." Colonel Davison rejoined the conversation as the last of the spectators left the range. "Captain, I owe you an apology. You shouldn't have had to go through that demonstration to validate your combat report." "No harm done, sir." Though they both knew that wasn't entirely true. "At least now there's no question about what happened yesterday." "Actually, there's been a development you should know about. Higher headquarters has been monitoring the situation in this area of operations. Your performance yesterday, both the tactical success and the marksmanship demonstration, has attracted some attention at the Pentagon." Martinez felt a familiar knot forming in her stomach. Attention from the Pentagon could mean many things, and in her experience, most of them weren't good for junior officers. "What kind of attention, sir?" she asked carefully. "The kind that comes with new opportunities," Davison replied. "There's a position opening up with Special Operations Command. They're looking for qualified officers to serve as military advisors to foreign sniper programs. It would mean promotion to major and a chance to work with some of the most elite units in the military." Martinez considered the offer carefully. Special Operations Command represented the pinnacle of military professionalism, the kind of assignment that could define a career. But it would also mean leaving her current unit, the soldiers she'd trained with and fought alongside. "Sir, I appreciate the opportunity, but I need to think about it," she said finally. "My commitment is to the men and women of this battalion. They're my responsibility." "I understand, but Martinez, opportunities like this don't come along often, especially not for officers at your level. Whatever decision you make sure you're not limiting yourself because of other people's expectations." That evening, Martinez sat on the roof of her quarters, watching the sunset over the Afghan mountains. The events of the day played through her mind. The questioning of her abilities, the pressure to prove herself, and the offer of advancement that would take her away from combat operations. Jensen found her there an hour later, carrying 2 cups of coffee and wearing the expression of someone who had something important to say.
Permission to speak freely, ma'am? He asked, settling down beside her on the makeshift bench someone had built from ammunition crates. Always, Jensen. What's on your mind? That demonstration today, you didn't just prove you could shoot. You proved something bigger than that. He paused, searching for the right words. Ma'am, I've served with a lot of officers, and most of them would have let that intelligence asshole's questions slide. They wouldn't have risked looking foolish in front of half the base.
Martinez sipped her coffee, waiting for him to continue. But you didn't back down. You forced them to judge you on your performance instead of their preconceptions. That takes guts. Jensen turned to look at her directly. Whatever decision you make about that special ops position, just remember that there are soldiers out there who need officers like you, officers who won't compromise or back down when it matters. As if summoned by their conversation, Park and Williams appeared on the roof, followed by Torres and several other members of the battalion. Word of the demonstration had spread throughout the base, and they had come to express their gratitude in the way soldiers always had, by sharing stories, jokes, and the camaraderie that bound them together. But Martinez knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges, new tests of her abilities and leadership. The demonstration had silenced the immediate doubts about her marksmanship, but it had also raised expectations. Now everyone would be watching to see if she could maintain this level of performance under even more challenging conditions. Captain, Torres said, settling down with his coffee, I've been thinking about what happened today. That intelligence officer questioning your abilities, it wasn't really about your shooting, was it? Martinez considered the question carefully. Torres was perceptive, and she had learned to value his insights during their time together. No, it wasn't, she admitted. It was about whether a woman belongs in combat operations, whether we can perform at the same level as our male counterparts. Harrison was looking for any excuse to validate his preconceptions. Which makes what you did today even more important, Park observed. You didn't just prove you could shoot, you proved that excellence speaks louder than prejudice. Williams, who had been listening quietly, spoke up. Ma'am, my sister wants to join the Army when she graduates high school. She's worried about whether she'll be accepted, whether she'll be given a fair chance. What should I tell her? Martinez looked at the young soldier, seeing her own younger self in his earnest expression. Tell her that the military will test her in ways she can't imagine. Some of those tests will be fair, and some won't. But if she's willing to work harder than everyone else, if she's willing to prove herself again and again, she can succeed. And if she faces the kind of skepticism you dealt with today, Jensen asked, then she does what I did. She lets her performance speak for itself. You can't argue with results, and you can't debate competence when it's demonstrated clearly and consistently. The conversation continued late into the night, touching on topics that soldiers rarely discussed openly, the challenges of proving oneself in a traditionally male-dominated field, the weight of representing not just oneself, but an entire gender, and the satisfaction that came from earning respect through professional excellence rather than political correctness. As the others gradually drifted back to their quarters, Martinez remained on the roof with Jensen. The young corporal had something on his mind, and she had learned to recognize the signs. Ma'am, can I ask you something personal? He said finally. Go ahead, Jensen. Do you ever get tired of having to prove yourself? I mean, you're clearly the best shot in this battalion, maybe in the entire division, but you still have to demonstrate your abilities to people who should already know better. Martinez was quiet for a long moment, watching the stars appear in the clear Afghan sky. Jensen, my grandfather once told me that the price of excellence is eternal vigilance, not just against external enemies, but against the complacency that comes with success. Every demonstration, every test, every challenge makes me a better soldier. But it's not fair that you have to face more challenges than the rest of us. Fair? Martinez smiled grimly. Jensen, nothing about military service is fair. We don't join the Army because life is fair. We join because someone has to stand guard while others sleep. Someone has to face the dangers that ordinary people can't handle. If that means I have to prove myself more often than my male counterparts, so be it. Jensen nodded thoughtfully. I never thought about it that way.
The important thing to remember is that every challenge overcome makes the next one easier. Every doubt silenced makes your reputation stronger. Today, I silenced a lot of doubts. Tomorrow, maybe I won't have to work quite so hard to be taken seriously. As Jensen headed back to his quarters, Martinez remained on the roof for another hour, thinking about the day's events and what they meant for her future. The demonstration had been necessary, but it had also revealed something important about her own motivations. She wasn't just fighting for acceptance or recognition, she was fighting to prove that competence and character mattered more than gender or background. Every successful mission, every impossible shot, every moment of leadership under pressure added to a legacy that would outlast her own career. Somewhere out there, other women were watching her example, measuring their own possibilities against her achievements. William's sister, perhaps, or the next generation of female soldiers who would face their own tests and challenges. The thought both humbled and motivated her. She wasn't just Captain Sarah Martinez, sniper and officer. She was a symbol, a representation of what was possible when talent met opportunity and was backed by unwavering determination. As she finally headed to her quarters, Martinez felt a renewed sense of purpose. Tomorrow would bring new missions, new opportunities to serve, and new chances to prove that excellence recognized no boundaries. The rifle would be ready, and so would she. The doubters had been silenced, at least for now, but Martinez knew that true respect wasn't earned in a single demonstration. It was built shot by shot, mission by mission, through consistent professional performance under the most challenging conditions. And she was ready for whatever challenges lay ahead.
2 weeks after the demonstration, Martinez received word that would change everything. Intelligence reports indicated a high-value target had been located in a compound approximately 15 kilometers from their forward operating base. The target was Khalil Mansour, a Taliban commander responsible for coordinating attacks against coalition forces throughout the region. The mission briefing took place at 0500 hours in the Secure Operations Center. Colonel Davidson stood before a detailed satellite image of the target compound, pointing out key features with a laser pointer. Mansour is confirmed to be at this location, Davidson began. Intelligence suggests he's meeting with other high-level commanders to plan a major offensive. This is our best opportunity to eliminate a significant threat to coalition operations. The compound was a fortified structure built into the side of a mountain, with multiple buildings connected by covered walkways. High walls surrounded the complex, and guard towers provided overlapping fields of fire. It was the kind of target that would normally require a full-scale assault involving multiple units and air support. "What's the tactical situation, sir?" Martinez asked, studying the satellite imagery carefully. "Complicated," Davidson replied grimly. "The compound is in a politically sensitive area near the Pakistani border. We can't use airstrikes or artillery without risking an international incident. This has to be a precision operation with minimal collateral damage." Staff Sergeant Torres leaned forward in his chair. "Sir, are we talking about a direct assault? That compound looks like it could house 50 to 60 fighters." "Negative," Davidson replied. "Intelligence estimates 12 to 15 personnel currently in the compound. But more importantly, we have a narrow window of opportunity. Mansour is scheduled to read the compound at dawn tomorrow. After that, we may not get another chance." Martinez examined the terrain surrounding the compound through her tactical scope. The geography was challenging, steep hills covered with loose rock and sparse vegetation. Most approaches to the compound were exposed to observation and defensive fire. "What about overwatch positions?" she asked, already calculating sight lines and distances. Davidson smiled grimly. "That's where you come in, Captain. There's a ridgeline approximately 800 meters northeast of the compound that offers a clear field of fire. The terrain is difficult to access, which means it's not well defended." The plan began to take shape as Davidson outlined the mission parameters. A small reconnaissance team would establish observation of the compound during the night. At dawn, when Mansour appeared for his scheduled departure, Martinez would eliminate him with a single precision shot from the ridgeline. One shot, one kill. We get one opportunity at this, and if we miss, Mansour disappears back into the tribal areas where we'll never find him. Lieutenant Colonel Harrison, who had remained mostly silent since the demonstration incident, spoke up. "Captain Martinez, this is an extremely challenging shot. The range is significant, and you'll be shooting at dawn when light conditions are changing rapidly.
Are you confident in your ability to make the shot? Martinez met his gaze steadily. Sir, if I can see the target clearly through my scope, I can hit it. That's what I do. The infiltration began at midnight. Martinez and her team, Jensen, Park, and Williams, moved through the darkness using the same techniques they'd employed 2 weeks earlier. The terrain was even more challenging this time, with steep grades and loose shale that threatened to send them tumbling down the mountainside with every step. They reached their position 3 hours before dawn, giving them time to establish a proper hide site and prepare their equipment. The Barrett rifle was assembled and test-fired with a suppressor to minimize the sound signature. Jensen set up his spotting scope and began calculating environmental factors. Through her night vision scope, Martinez can see the compound clearly. Guards patrolled the walls at irregular intervals and lights burned in several buildings. Intelligence had been accurate. This was clearly an active command center, not an abandoned position. Multiple personnel visible, Jensen reported quietly. I count at least 8 individuals in the compound, 2 guards on the main gate, others moving between buildings. Park established communications with the reconnaissance team positioned closer to the compound. Recon 1 reports target still inside the main building, no sign of departure preparation. The waiting was always the hardest part. Martinez had learned during her years as a sniper that patience was more important than marksmanship skills. A sniper might wait for hours or even days for the perfect shot, and the ability to remain alert and focused during extended periods of inactivity separated professionals from amateurs. As dawn approached, the compound began showing increased activity. Guards changed shifts, vehicles were started and moved, and lights came on in buildings that had been dark during the night. Movement in the main building, Jensen reported. Multiple individuals visible through windows. Could be our target preparing to depart. Martinez adjusted her position behind the Barrett, settling into the shooting stance she'd practiced thousands of times. The early morning air was still, with minimal wind, ideal conditions for a precision shot at extended range. Distance to primary target area is 810 meters, no significant wind factors. Temperature is stable. Through her scope, Martinez could see the main entrance to the compound clearly. 2 vehicles were positioned near the building, a pickup truck and a larger SUV that would likely be used for transporting high-value personnel. Recon 1 reports movement at the main entrance, Martinez replied quietly. Multiple individuals exiting the building. Martinez's finger found the trigger as she watched figures emerge from the compound's main building. The first man out was clearly a bodyguard, young, alert, carrying an AK-47 at the ready. The second figure was older, wearing traditional Afghan clothing and moving with the confidence of someone accustomed to command. Target identified, Jensen confirmed through his spotting scope. Male, approximately 50 years old, traditional dress, moving toward the SUV. Martinez centered her crosshairs on the figure's chest, 810 meters. No wind, clear line of sight. She controlled her breathing and found her natural respiratory pause.
Martinez's finger tightened on the trigger as Khalil Mansour walked confidently toward the waiting SUV. Through her scope, she could see his face clearly, a bearded man in his 50s with the weathered features of someone who'd spent years in the mountains. He moved without apparent concern for his safety, surrounded by bodyguards but not displaying the paranoid behavior of most high-value targets. Wind is still calm, Jensen whispered, his eye pressed to the spotting scope. Target is moving slowly toward the vehicle. Estimate 10 seconds until he reaches the door. Martinez tracked Mansour's movement through her scope, the crosshairs following his center mass as he approached the SUV. At this range, even a slight miscalculation could result in a miss, and they wouldn't get a second chance. Clear shot, she murmured, more to herself than to Jensen. Target acquired. But as Mansour reached for the SUV's door handle, something unexpected happened. A child, a boy who couldn't have been more than 8 years old, came running out of the main building, calling out in Pashto. Mansour turned toward the boy with a smile, reaching down to pick him up. Martinez's finger froze on the trigger. The boy was laughing, his small arms wrapped around Mansour's neck. Through the scope, she could see the genuine affection between the man and child, a grandfather and grandson, or perhaps uncle and nephew. Target is stationary, Jensen reported, unaware of Martinez's internal struggle. Clear shot available. The mission perimeters were clear. Mansour was responsible for the deaths of dozens of coalition soldiers. He was planning operations that would kill more Americans if he was allowed to escape. The tactical situation was perfect, and she had a clear shot at one of the most wanted men in Afghanistan. But the child changed everything. Martinez had never fired a shot that might traumatize an innocent, and she wasn't about to start now. She lifted her head slightly from the scope, watching as Mansour handed the boy to one of his bodyguards and climbed into the SUV. "Taking the shot," she announced quietly, settling back behind the scope. The SUV's engine started and the vehicle began moving toward the compound's main gate. Martinez tracked it through her scope, waiting for a clear shot that wouldn't endanger the child or other civilians who had gathered to see Mansour off. "Target is mobile," Jensen reported. "Vehicle speed approximately 15 miles per hour." Shooting at a moving target required different calculations. Martinez had to account for the vehicle's speed and direction, leading the target to ensure her bullet would intercept it at the right moment. The mathematics of the shot became more complex, but her training kicked in automatically. The SUV slowed as it approached the compound's main gate, giving Martinez the opportunity she needed. Mansour was visible through the passenger side window, his profile clear in her scope's crosshairs. She exhaled slowly, found her natural respiratory pause, and squeezed the trigger. The Barrett's massive report echoed across the valley as the .50 caliber bullet covered the 810 meters to target in less than 1 second. Through the spotting scope, Jensen watched the bullet impact the SUV's passenger compartment with devastating effect. "Hit confirmed," Jensen reported. "Target is down." The SUV swerved off the narrow road and crashed into a rock wall, its engine smoking and radiator steaming. Guards from the compound came running toward the crash site with their weapons ready, but no clear target to engage. "Mission accomplished," Martinez said quietly, already beginning to break down the Barrett rifle. "Let's get out of here before they figure out where that shot came from." The extraction was more urgent than their previous operations. The Taliban fighters at the compound would quickly realize they were under sniper attack and would begin searching for the source of the shot. Martinez and her team had perhaps 30 minutes before enemy patrols reached their position on the ridgeline. They moved quickly but carefully down the mountainside, using natural cover and concealment to avoid detection. Behind them, they could hear the sound of vehicles starting and men shouting as the compound survivors organized a search effort. Recon 1 reports multiple personnel departing the compound in vehicles, estimate 20 to 30 fighters beginning area search. Martinez pushed the pace, knowing that their survival depended on reaching friendly territory before the enemy patrols could locate them on the ridgeline. The terrain that had provided them with an excellent shooting position was now working against them. The same steep slopes and loose rock that had concealed their approach now slowed their escape. 2 hours later, they reached the predetermined extraction point where vehicles from their unit were waiting. Staff Sergeant Torres grinned as he saw them approaching. "Outstanding work, Captain," he said, helping them load their equipment. "Intelligence confirms Mansour is dead. That's one less terrorist planning attacks against our people." Martinez nodded but didn't share Torres's enthusiasm. The mission was successful, but something about it troubled her. Perhaps it was the image of the child hugging Mansour, or perhaps it was the growing realization that each successful mission only led to more dangerous assignments. Back at the forward operating base, the debriefing was brief and professional. Colonel Davidson praised the team's performance and confirmed that intelligence assets had verified Mansour's death. The Taliban had lost one of their most effective commanders, and coalition forces in the region would face reduced threat levels as a result. "Captain," Davidson said as the formal debriefing concluded, "I need to speak with you privately." Martinez remained behind as the others filed out of the operations center. She had a feeling she knew what Davidson wanted to discuss. "The Special Operations Command position. They want an answer. After today's performance, you're their top choice for the advisor role." Martinez had been dreading this conversation. The success of her recent missions had only increased the pressure to accept the promotion and transfer.
"Sir, I've been thinking about the offer," Martinez began, choosing her words carefully. "It's a tremendous opportunity, and I'm honored to be considered. But I have concerns about leaving my current unit." Colonel Davidson leaned back in his chair, studying her face. "Captain, you've proven yourself to be one of the finest officers I've served with. Your tactical skills, leadership ability, and marksmanship are exceptional. But staying here limits your potential impact. In Special Operations Command, you could train and advise sniper programs across multiple theaters of operation." "That's exactly what concerns me, sir," Martinez replied. "Training programs are important, but right now, my soldiers need leadership in combat operations. Torres, Jensen, Park, Williams, these are the people I've trained with and fought alongside. They're my responsibility." Davidson nodded thoughtfully. "I understand loyalty to your unit, Captain, but you have to consider the bigger picture.
How many lives could you save by training other snipers to perform at your level? How many operations could succeed because of the skills you could pass on? The argument was compelling, and Martinez knew it. A single advisor could potentially influence hundreds of operations by improving the capabilities of foreign military units. But the idea of leaving combat operations for a training role felt like abandoning her core mission. "Sir, may I have another week to consider the offer?" Unfortunately, no. Higher headquarters needs an answer by tomorrow morning. They're assembling the advisor team immediately, and deployment begins next month. Martinez felt the familiar weight of command decisions settling on her shoulders. Every choice carried consequences, and this one would define the remainder of her military career. That evening, she found herself once again on the roof of her quarters, this time joined by her entire team. Jensen had brought his harmonica and was playing a melancholy tune that seemed to capture everyone's mood. "Ma'am, can I ask you something?" "Always, Williams." "That shot today, I watched it through binoculars from the recon position. 800 meters, moving target, one shot. How do you make it look so easy?" Martinez considered the question carefully. "It's not easy, Williams. Every shot requires complete focus and preparation. But more importantly, it requires accepting the weight of what you're doing. When you pull that trigger, you're making a decision that can't be undone." "Do you ever have doubts?" Park asked quietly. "Every time," Martinez admitted. "Anyone who doesn't have doubts about taking a life shouldn't be trusted with the responsibility. But doubt doesn't mean hesitation. When the mission requires it, you do what needs to be done." Torres, who had been listening quietly, spoke up. "Captain, whatever you decide about the special ops position, just know that serving under your command has been an honor. You've taught us more about leadership and professionalism than any officer I've served with." "That goes for all of us," Jensen added, setting down his harmonica. "You've shown us what it means to be a soldier. Not just the shooting, though that's been impressive as hell, but the way you stand up for your people and never compromise your principles." Martinez felt a lump forming in her throat. These soldiers had become more than her unit. They were her family, bound together by shared experiences that only they could fully understand. "Whatever happens," she said finally, "remember that being a soldier isn't about the rank on your collar or the medals on your chest. It's about standing up when it matters, protecting those who can't protect themselves, and never backing down from what's right." The next morning, Martinez stood outside Colonel Davidson's office, her decision made. The conversation with her team had clarified her thinking in a way that hours of analytical consideration hadn't managed. Her place was with the soldiers who depended on her leadership, not in a staff position, however prestigious it might be. She knocked on Davidson's door and entered when he called out. "Captain, I assume you've made your decision about the special operations position." "Yes, sir. I respectfully decline the offer. My commitment is to this unit and these soldiers. They're where I can make the most difference." Davidson's expression was unreadable. "Captain, you're turning down a promotion to major and an opportunity to work with the military's most elite units. Are you certain about this decision?" "Absolutely, sir. I joined the Army to serve in combat operations, to read soldiers in the field. A staff position, even a prestigious one, doesn't align with my goals as an officer." "I see." Davidson made a note in the folder on his desk. "Well, in that case, I have some news that might interest you. Intelligence has identified another high-value target in our area of operation. This one is going to require the kind of precision shooting that only you can provide." "What's the situation, sir?" "Another Taliban commander, but this time the target is mobile and heavily guarded. We're looking at multiple possible shooting positions and extremely challenging environmental conditions. It's the kind of mission that will test every skill you've developed." "When do we deploy?" "Tomorrow night, Captain. Get your team prepared. This one is going to be your most difficult challenge yet." As Martinez left the colonel's office, she felt a sense of satisfaction that had nothing to do with career advancement or recognition. She'd chosen to stay where she belonged, with the soldiers who depended on her expertise and leadership, facing whatever challenges came their way. But as she began preparing for the next mission, Martinez couldn't shake the feeling that the real test of her abilities was yet to come.
The mission briefing for Operation Desert Eagle took place at 2100 hours in the Secure Operations Center. This time, the assembled officers included representatives from multiple units, Martinez's battalion, Special Forces elements, and air support coordinators. The scope of the operation indicated something significantly more complex than previous missions. Gentlemen and Captain Martinez, Colonel Davidson began, we're dealing with a target that's been evading capture for over 6 months. Hassan al-Rashid, also known as the Ghost, has been coordinating attacks across 3 provinces and has proven extremely difficult to pin down. The satellite imagery showed a convoy route through mountainous terrain with multiple possible ambush points and escape routes. Al-Rashid traveled in armored vehicles with heavy security, never following the same route twice, and had survived at least 4 previous attempts to eliminate him. Intelligence indicates he'll be moving through this valley tomorrow evening, Davidson continued, highlighting a narrow pass between 2 ridgelines. The convoy consists of 3 vehicles, 2 escort trucks with armed fighters, and 1 armored SUV carrying the target. Martinez studied the terrain maps carefully. The valley was a natural choke point, but it also provided multiple defensive positions for the convoy's security elements. Any sniper position would be exposed to return fire from numerous angles. "What's the distance from potential shooting positions to the target area?" she asked. "Between 900 and 1,200 meters, depending on which position we select," replied Major Stevens, the operations officer. "The terrain limits our options significantly." Torres leaned forward to examine the maps. "Ma'am, those are some of the longest shots we've attempted under tactical conditions. With a moving target and potential return fire, the margin for error is minimal. Which is exactly why Captain Martinez will be leading this operation. The target window is extremely narrow, perhaps 30 seconds as the convoy passes through the designated kill zone. We get 1 shot at this." The complexity of the shot was daunting even by Martinez's standards. A moving target at over 1,000 meters with multiple environmental variables and the added pressure of knowing that failure meant losing a high-value target that might not be located again for months. "Sir, what's our extraction plan if the shot draws return fire?" Jensen asked, studying the terrain features around the proposed sniper positions. "Fast ropes from helicopters. We'll have 2 Black Hawks standing by at low altitude. Total time from shot to extraction should be under 10 minutes. Martinez nodded, already visualizing the operation's timeline. 10 minutes was an eternity when enemy forces were actively searching for a sniper position. Every second would need to be planned and executed with precision. "What about weather conditions?" Park asked, consulting her meteorological data. "Variable," Stevens admitted. "We're expecting high winds and possible precipitation. Visibility could be limited by cloud cover." The more Martinez learned about the mission parameters, the more challenging it became. Long-range shooting in adverse weather conditions with a narrow target window and hostile forces actively searching for her position. It was the kind of shot that separated legendary snipers from merely competent ones. "Captain," Davidson said, "I need to ask you directly. Given these conditions, what's your assessment of mission success probability?" Martinez was quiet for a long moment, running calculations in her head. Wind speed, bullet drop, target movement, environmental factors, all of the variables that could turn a perfect shot into a complete miss. "Sir, under ideal conditions, I rate success probability at 80%. Given the environmental challenges and tactical situation, I'd estimate 60%, still well within acceptable parameters for a high-value target. And if conditions deteriorate further, then we adapt and overcome, sir. That's what we do." The final mission preparations began immediately. Martinez and her team spent hours reviewing intelligence materials, studying photographs of al-Rashid, and familiarizing themselves with the convoy's probable composition and movement patterns. The Barrett rifle received meticulous attention. Every component cleaned and inspected, the scope verified and adjusted, ammunition selected and examined round by round. At these ranges and under these conditions, equipment failure could mean mission failure. "Ma'am," Jensen said as they completed their preparations, "I've been your spotter for 8 months now, and I've never seen shooting like yours. But this mission, it's pushing the limits of what's possible with current technology." Martinez looked up from the rifle she was cleaning. "Jensen, do you remember what I told you when you first joined this team?" "Yes, ma'am. Sniping isn't about the equipment. It's about the person behind the scope." "Exactly. The Barrett is just a tool.
The scope is just optics. What makes the shot is training, experience, and the willingness to push beyond what most people think is possible. Williams, who had been unusually quiet during the preparation phase, spoke up. "Captain, what if we miss? What if the conditions are too challenging?" Martinez set down the rifle and looked at each member of her team. "Then we miss, Williams, but we won't miss because we were unprepared or because we gave up when things got difficult. We'll miss only if the laws of physics make success impossible." "And if that happens?" Park asked. "Then we regroup, analyze what went wrong, and wait for another opportunity. But I don't plan on missing." That night, as they prepared for insertion into the target area, Martinez felt the familiar mixture of anticipation and calm that preceded major operations. She'd made shots that other snipers considered impossible, had proven her capabilities under the most challenging conditions. But tomorrow's mission would test every skill she'd developed, every lesson she'd learned, and every ounce of determination that had brought her this far. Success would cement her reputation as one of the military's finest marksmen. Failure would mean a dangerous enemy remained free to kill American soldiers. As she checked her equipment one final time, Martinez knew that tomorrow would determine not just the success of Operation Desert Eagle, but the trajectory of her entire military career.
The insertion went flawlessly, with Martinez and her team reaching their designated sniper position 4 hours before the expected convoy arrival. The shooting position was a rocky outcrop that provided excellent concealment but limited options for movement once they were committed to the shot. Through her night vision scope, Martinez surveyed the valley below. The kill zone was clearly visible, a narrow section of road where the convoy would be forced to slow down due to a series of tight turns. At 1,150 meters, it would be one of the longest tactical shots of her career. "Environmental conditions are marginal," Jensen reported quietly, studying his meteorological instruments. "Wind is gusting from the northwest at 12 to 18 miles per hour. Cloud ceiling is dropping, and we might have precipitation within the hour." Martinez nodded, making mental calculations for the increased difficulty. Wind gusts at this range could push a bullet several feet off target, and changing light conditions would make target identification more challenging. "Comms check with extraction team," Park reported. "Blackhawks are on station at low altitude, ready for immediate pickup on command." The waiting began, the most difficult part of any sniper mission. Martinez maintained her position behind the Barrett rifle, adjusting occasionally for comfort but never losing sight of the target area. Her team remained alert but quiet, knowing that conversation could compromise their position if enemy scouts were in the area. 2 hours before the expected convoy arrival, the weather began deteriorating rapidly. Light rain started falling and the wind gusts increased in intensity. Through her scope, Martinez watched as visibility in the valley decreased significantly. "This is turning into a nightmare," Williams whispered, water dripping from his helmet. "Stay focused," Martinez replied calmly. "We've trained for these conditions. Adapt and overcome." At 1847 hours, Park received the radio transmission they'd been waiting for. "Overwatch, this is Eye in the Sky. Convoy is moving, 3 vehicles as expected. Estimate arrival at target area in 12 minutes. Martinez settled in behind the Barrett, feeling the familiar weight of the weapon against her shoulder. The rifle stock had been slippery, but her shooting gloves provided adequate grip. Through the scope, she could see the road where the convoy would appear. "Wind is now gusting up to 22 miles per hour, Jensen reported. "I'm seeing significant deflection in the vegetation downrange. This is going to require major corrections." Martinez made the necessary adjustments to her scope, compensating for the increased wind drift at the extended range. At 1,150 meters, even a slight miscalculation could result in a complete miss. "Visual contact," Jensen announced. 3 vehicles approaching from the south. Lead vehicle is a pickup truck with mounted machine gun. Second vehicle appears to be the armored USV. Third vehicle is another escort truck. Through her scope, Martinez could see the convoy moving through the valley at approximately 40 miles per hour, faster than intelligence had predicted. The increased speed would make the shot even more challenging, requiring her to lead the target by a significant margin. "Target vehicle is maintaining position in the convoy," Jensen continued. "Estimate 15 seconds until it reaches the designated kill zone." Martinez tracked the USV through her scope, waiting for the moment that it would slow for the series of tight turns that defined their target area. The crosshairs followed the vehicle's movement as she calculated the complex ballistics required for success. 10 seconds, Jensen called out.
The USV began slowing as it approached the turns, giving Martinez the opportunity she'd been waiting for. Through the scope, she could see the figures in the vehicle's windows, the driver, a passenger in the front seat, and someone in the back that matched Al-Rashid's description. "Target acquired," Martinez announced quietly, taking the shot. She controlled her breathing, found her natural respiratory pause, and began applying pressure to the trigger. But just as she was about to fire, a massive wind gust struck the ridgeline, strong enough to rock the entire team. "Hold fire," Jensen called out. "Major deflection." Martinez held her position, waiting for the wind to settle. Through her scope, she watched as the convoy continued through the kill zone. They had perhaps 5 more seconds before the vehicles would be past their optimal engagement area. The wind settled slightly, and Martinez immediately reacquired her target. The USV was now at the furthest edge of the kill zone, moving away from her position at increasing speed. "Clear shot," Jensen confirmed. "Send it." Martinez made a final adjustment for the changing angle and fired. The Barrett's massive report echoed across the valley as the .50 caliber bullet began its journey toward the target. At 1,150 meters, the bullet would take over 1 second to reach the convoy, an eternity in tactical terms. Through his spotting scope, Jensen tracked the bullet's impact. "Hit confirmed. Target vehicle is disabled, slowing rapidly." The armored USV swerved off the road and crashed into a rock wall, its engine smoking and front end severely damaged. The escort vehicles immediately stopped and began deploying fighters to secure the area and search for the source of the shot. "Mission accomplished," Martinez said, already beginning to break down the Barrett rifle. "Request immediate extraction." Park keyed her radio. "Extraction team, this is Overwatch. Mission complete. Request immediate pickup." The sound of helicopter rotors filled the air as the Blackhawks approached their position. Martinez and her team gathered their equipment and prepared for fast rope extraction, knowing that Taliban fighters would soon be searching the ridgeline. As the helicopter lifted off with the team safely aboard, Martinez looked down at the valley where the disabled convoy was surrounded by confusion and smoke. Another high-value target eliminated, another threat to American forces removed. But more than that, she'd proven once again that exceptional marksmanship combined with professional training could overcome seemingly impossible odds. The shot she'd just made would be talked about in sniper schools for years to come. 1,150 meters, adverse weather conditions, moving target, perfect execution. Colonel Davidson was waiting when they returned to base, along with several other officers Martinez didn't recognize. "Outstanding work, Captain," Davidson said as they entered the debriefing room. "Intelligence confirms Al-Rashid is dead. That's the most significant elimination we've achieved in this theater of operations." One of the unfamiliar officers stepped forward, a full colonel with Ranger tabs and Special Operations insignia. "Captain Martinez, I'm Colonel Matthews from Joint Special Operations Command. That shot you just made has attracted significant attention at the highest levels of command." Martinez felt the familiar mixture of pride and apprehension that came with recognition from senior officers. "Thank you, sir. My team performed exceptionally under challenging conditions." "Which brings me to why I'm here," Matthews continued. "We have a position that specifically requires your unique skill set. It's not the advisor role you declined previously. This is a direct action position with our most elite sniper teams. You'd be working with the best marksmen in the military on the highest priority missions." Martinez looked at Jensen, Park, Williams, and Torres, the soldiers who had become her military family. Whatever decision she made would affect not just her career, but their lives as well. "Sir," she said finally, "I'm honored by the offer, but my answer remains the same. My commitment is to these soldiers and this unit. This is where I belong." Matthews nodded with what looked like respect rather than disappointment. "Captain, loyalty like yours is rare in today's military. Your soldiers are fortunate to have your leadership." As the debriefing concluded and the officers departed, Martinez found herself once again surrounded by her team. They'd shared another successful mission, another impossible shot made possible through teamwork and dedication. "Ma'am," Jensen said with a grin, "that was the finest piece of shooting I've ever witnessed. 1,150 meters in those conditions, most snipers wouldn't have even attempted that shot." "Most snipers don't have the finest spotter in the Army," Martinez replied. "This mission succeeded because every member of this team performed flawlessly." Williams, who had been quiet during the debriefing, spoke up. "Captain, I wanted you to know that serving under your command has made me a better soldier. You've shown us what's possible when you refuse to compromise your standards." That goes for all of us, Torres added. Whatever challenge is next, we're ready to face them together. Martinez looked at each of her soldiers, professionals who had proven themselves in the crucible of combat, friends who had become family through shared hardships and mutual respect. Tomorrow will bring new missions, new challenges, and new opportunities to serve. But whatever comes, we'll face it the same way we always have, as a team, with professional competence and unwavering commitment to each other. As they walked toward their quarters in the gathering darkness, Martinez reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. From the young woman who had first picked up her grandfather's rifle on a Texas ranch, to the seasoned captain who had just completed one of the most challenging sniper missions in military history. She had proven that excellence wasn't about gender or background. It was about dedication, training, and the willingness to stand up when others counted on you. Every doubt silenced, every challenge overcome, every impossible shot made possible through sheer determination. The rifle had been her tool, but her character had been the true weapon. And tomorrow, she would pick up that rifle again, ready to face whatever tests awaited her and her team in the ongoing fight for freedom. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.